Next to the manuscript, the most important elements of your book are the title and the cover. Because in today's information age, if the cover's not good and if the title is not descriptive, if it doesn't tell the person who's browsing either online or in the bookstore exactly what that book is about as best as possible, then the reader is going to walk by it and not pick it up. We want to talk about categories because there's two basic categories. There's fiction and nonfiction, or two basic genres, and there's of course many categories, subcategories underneath the genre of fiction and nonfiction. And what some of the common mistakes that I see are this. For authors that are writing a nonfiction book, typically a self-help book or a teaching book, maybe a spiritual teaching book, they often use anecdotes from their own story, from their own experience to support the material in the book, which is absolutely fine. But one of the biggest mistakes that they make is they spend way too much talking about their personal experience and not talking about the self-help for the reader or the teachings for the reader. And so then, consequently, the book reads like a memoir instead of a nonfiction self-help or spiritual teaching book. That's one of the top mistakes I see in submitted manuscripts. For fiction authors, one of the top mistakes I see is that they try and teach too much. With fiction, the purpose of a fiction book, number one, is to entertain the reader. Number two, it is to teach the reader something. The purpose of a nonfiction book is the reverse. Number one, it is to teach. Number two, it is to entertain. And a lot of first-time authors get those confused. That they start telling anecdotes and things in there about their personal story when they're writing nonfiction in an effort to be funny or an effort to entertain the reader. And when they do that, their message gets overshadowed, so to speak, by the amount of time they spend talking about their own life. And of course, as a first-time author, that's the easiest thing to do, is to write about what you know. So who do you know the best? Yourself. So I see more and more that authors, more authors make that mistake, first-time authors, than any other one that I can think of. In fiction, it's the opposite. Most fiction authors also have a message that they want to share, which is wonderful. However, you have to remember that in fiction, it's the story that is got to be the most important piece of your writing. In fiction, the art is in what you don't say as opposed to what you do. Quite the opposite of nonfiction, where you have to be very, very clear and explicit about what the points you want to get across to the reader. My friend and colleague Jan Johnson, publisher of Wiser Books and Canary Press, likes to quote the old adage of, when you're writing a nonfiction book, you tell the reader that you're going to tell them, then you tell them, then you remind them that you told them. So, the point being that it's information-based. It's very, very information-based, and it's important for nonfiction authors to keep that in mind.